When my father raised his glass that night, I thought he was about to toast my birthday. Instead, he cleared his throat, smiled at 100 watching faces, and said, "This is the day we cut Sarah Caldwell out of our family for good." The room fell silent. My mother adjusted her pearls. My brother grinned, and every pair of eyes turned toward me, waiting to see how humiliation looked in real time. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just felt something split open inside, a soundless crack between who I was and who I'd never be again. That was the moment I realized they hadn't just disowned me, they'd erased me, and that's exactly where my story begins. I never imagined a birthday could be the day someone was erased from their own life. The invitation had said family reconciliation, a dinner at Caldwell's table, the restaurant that once smelled like my childhood. After 10 years away, I wanted peace, just one evening that didn't end in criticism or silence. The jazz band played softly, candles flickered, the air almost felt safe. Then the music stopped mid-note. My father tapped the microphone, wearing the smile he saved for clients. His tone was steady, almost rehearsed. As he told the guests, he needed to be transparent. The next sentence cut through the room like glass. From that moment forward, I was no longer part of the Caldwell family, neither by blood nor finance. A hush spread. My mother stood beside him, nodding as if agreeing to a business deal. My brother twirled his wineglass, amused. My chest tightened, but I stayed still. When he accused me of mishandling the foundation's funds, I felt every eye crawl over my skin. My phone buzzed. A message from work. Employment suspended pending investigation. I looked up at the stage, realizing the timing wasn't coincidence. Gregory Hale, my father's closest friend, had signed the notice. And behind the stage lights, a new banner gleamed. Miles Caldwell, incoming director of the Caldwell Foundation. The applause that followed wasn't for me, it was for my replacement. I walked out before anyone could see me break. Outside, rain hissed against the pavement, washing away whatever name I had left. That night, Portland was a curtain of black water. I unlocked my apartment, the hallway light flickering above like it couldn't decide if I still existed. My bank app refused to open, my credit card was declined, and my work email had been disabled. Every door that tied me to stability had quietly shut. When I checked my personal inbox, there it was, an email from Miles. "You should let the past rest. You signed the audit book. We're only doing what's right." I laughed under my breath, the kind that tastes bitter. I had never signed a single ledger in my life. Pulling open the drawer beside the bed, I reached for the old wooden box I hadn't touched in years, the one holding my grandfather's papers. He'd founded the Caldwell Foundation long before any of us turned it into a family currency. Inside was a letter, its ink faded into the paper like a secret that refused to die. "Sarah, you're the only one who understands the value of trust. If the Caldwell Foundation ever falls, remember this. Authority belongs to whoever protects the truth, not whoever carries the name." My hands trembled as I flipped the page. Behind it was a notarized document, my name printed clean and sharp, signed 12 years ago, the exact month my grandfather died. He had made me the legal custodian of the foundation's audits. So that was it. I wasn't their threat because I failed them. I was their threat because I could expose them. They'd buried this document and built an entire lie on top of it. The rain tapped against the window, steady and cold. I sat on the floor, the letter in my lap, the city humming outside. If love was a balance sheet, my parents had just written me into the loss column. By morning, the storm had thinned to drizzle. I turned on my laptop, the black screen blinking with a green cursor, steady like a heartbeat. My fingers hovered before typing the words I'd avoided for years. Caldwell Foundation Ledger. Rows of numbers loaded. Transfers snaking from the main account to an offshore one in the Cayman Islands. The recipient, M. Caldwell. Miles. I called Naomi Tran, a former colleague who'd worked in fraud analytics. She answered on the second ring, her voice calm but wary. I told her what I'd found and what I needed. Access beyond the system. She hesitated before saying, "If you open that file, there's no going back." I stared at the rain streaking down my window. Then forward is the only direction left. Using encrypted channels, we ran the trace, An hour later, she sent me a compressed file. Inside were digital authorizations bearing Gregory Hale's signature, my father's lifelong ally, and the so-called guardian of the foundation. Every transfer was verified using my employee ID. Someone had cloned my credentials, leaving me as the ghost behind their transactions. Naomi's next message appeared on screen. That code could only come from inside the bank. Gregory has top-level clearance. My pulse steadied. My father had built the stage. Gregory had signed the paperwork, and Miles had taken the prize. I was just the scapegoat dressed as the culprit. I closed the laptop, the screen dimming until my reflection appeared, small, blurred, but finally awake. If they used data to destroy me, I would use data to deliver truth. The darkness swallowed the light, but the resolve stayed, glowing quietly where their power couldn't reach. 3 days after the dinner, HR called. They needed me to come in and clarify a few things. The word clarify always sounds harmless, until it's used as a weapon. The meeting was on the 21st floor, the glass walls reflecting a silver Portland sky. Gregory Hale sat at the center of the long table. Navy suit crisp, smile as polite as ever. He'd been my father's closest friend, a man who'd once called me kiddo. Now his tone was pure procedure. "This isn't a trial, Sarah," he said, "just transparency." The same word my father had used. He slid a thick folder toward me, my own name stamped across the top, each page carrying my signature, my initials, the official seal of the Caldwell Foundation. The documents claimed I'd transferred foundation funds offshore for personal investments. Every mark, every letter was mine, because someone had stolen them. My digital ID, my signature, my audit codes. The precision was surgical. I told him the papers were fake. He cut me off with that empty corporate calm. "We're just following policy. Take some time off." When I walked out, the hallway lights blinked, throwing my shadow long and thin against the floor. My phone vibrated. An unknown number. "Tell Richard it's done." I froze. Gregory hadn't even waited for me to leave the building before reporting back. That night, Naomi called. Her voice was tight. "Sarah, they've already sent the files to the Federal Bureau. Your name is listed as the responsible party." I let the silence stretch until it hurt. They hadn't just stolen my job. They'd built a prison with my initials on the door. Outside, rain pounded against the windows like an accusation. If they used their system to destroy me, then I'd use their system to end them. That night, I walked across the Hawthorne Bridge, the wind off the Willamette cutting through my coat. The city lights blurred in the drizzle. My grandfather used to say, "Family was where you were safe." I smiled bitterly at the thought. Safety, for me, had become a myth. My phone buzzed. Naomi again. She'd sent a message. "Encrypted file attached. Don't open while online. Back home." I locked the door, unplugged every device, pulled the curtains tight. When the file finally decompressed, my screen glowed with rows of documents. Consulting invoices signed by Gregory Hale. Monthly payments from the Caldwell Foundation to an entity called the Office of Civic Progress, and a political campaign report bearing my father's signature. The realization hit cold. The foundation wasn't just laundering family money, it was funneling illegal funds into a mayoral race. Then came the final file, a system note buried deep in the metadata. M. Caldwell authorized transfer using S. Caldwell's credentials. My brother had used my identity. They needed a scapegoat with a clean record. I was the perfect shield. I didn't cry out of fear. I cried because I realized I was the last person in that entire circle who still believed integrity mattered. The sound of rain merged with the rhythm of my typing. On my screen, a single command line appeared. Trace fund path. Route, Caldwell. Lines of code streamed down like veins filling with truth. For the first time in weeks, my pulse slowed. I was no longer the daughter they could erase. I was the auditor of their lies. Naomi called on a Tuesday morning, right after the Portland rain finally gave up. "There's someone you need to meet," she said. "Someone they tried to destroy too." We met at a small cafe near the Willamette, walls covered in black and white photos, the smell of espresso thick as smoke. In the corner sat Evelyn Park, a name I remembered from an old headline, an investigative journalist sued by Caldwell's table 7 years ago for defamation. She looked older than her photo, sharper too, her voice low and rasped from years of swallowing truth. She told me she'd lost her job after writing about my father's foundation. Then she slid a file across the table, a relic of her unfinished story. Inside were records linking Caldwell Foundation to a mayoral campaign, exactly what I'd uncovered days before. The same pattern, the same transfers, the same deceit. We decided to work together. I'd trace the digital evidence. Naomi would secure the legal angles, and Evelyn would prepare the narrative for when the truth went public. 3 women from different worlds, an analyst, a lawyer, and a silenced journalist, building a new kind of family out of wreckage. Evelyn leaned back, eyes steady. Your father made sure I'd never work again. He used his friends at your company to bury me. Naomi's laptop pinged then, an alert from her system. A corporate email flagged for deletion. The subject line read, Delete S. Caldwell's record permanently. Deadline Friday. The cafe suddenly felt too quiet. A man in a dark coat passed our table, set down a folded receipt, and left without a word. On the paper, written in quick ink, Stop, or you'll join your grandfather. My pulse froze. Grandpa had died of heart failure. At least, that's what they'd said, though no one ever saw a death certificate. None of us spoke for a while. Evelyn exhaled, slow and even, then said, When they start to threaten you, it means you're finally close. That night, back home, I turned off every light. I placed my 3 phones inside a metal box and listened to the silence pulse around me. Before bed, I wrote one line in my journal. Truth doesn't need allies, but now I have 2. I started the forensic audit at dusk. The Caldwell Foundation's archive was a labyrinth I'd built myself years ago. Every folder, every timestamp was familiar, like fingerprints I'd left behind. 3 hours in, I found it. An encrypted file buried deep under redundant logs. Legacy, final, PDF. The encryption key was a phrase I knew too well. Richard Trust. My father's vanity even extended to passwords. I cracked the code. The file opened to an audio recording. Static at first. Then my grandfather's voice. Frail, deliberate, trembling. If anyone in this bloodline uses the Caldwell name for greed, let justice reclaim the honor we lost. My breath caught. Hearing him felt like standing in front of a door I thought was gone. Below the audio were financial records, funds labeled Wildfire Relief siphoned days before his death, signed by R. Caldwell and co-signed by E. Caldwell. They had robbed him while he was dying, and to make it official, they'd forged a medical report claiming cardiac arrest. The final attachment twisted the knife deeper. An insurance policy listing a single beneficiary, Miles Caldwell. My brother. For a long time, I couldn't move. The screen glowed, washing the room in cold light. Everything they'd buried, money, guilt, blood, was right here, in my hands. I encrypted the evidence, sent copies to Naomi and Evelyn, and left a note. If I disappear, make sure the world knows. An hour later, Naomi messaged back. Got it! But Evelyn's account was just hacked. The doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. A man in a black suit stood motionless, expressionless, then placed an envelope on the floor and walked away. Inside, a single line in red ink. You're out of time. I didn't feel fear, only certainty. When liars resort to threats, it means the truth is already breathing down their necks. I opened my laptop, typed the final command of the night, and watched the screen flicker alive. Run Legacy Audit All. Outside, thunder rolled across Portland. Inside, the truth finally began to move. The Caldwell Foundation's summer gala glittered with money and lies. The banner outside the Monarch read, Building Integrity for the Next Generation. A joke only I understood. I arrived early, dressed in black. The USB in my pocket loaded with everything they'd buried. Offshore transfers, fake reports, my grandfather's voice. When the lights dimmed, my father took the stage beside my mother and Miles, talking about transparency while photographers snapped. I slipped the USB into the control laptop and hovered over a slide labeled A Legacy of Transparency. One breath, one click. The next slide appeared. Forensic Audit. Unauthorized Transfers. Caldwell Foundation. Gasps cut through the room. Emails, bank statements, and the recording of my grandfather's voice filled the hall. If anyone uses the Caldwell name for greed, Let justice reclaim the honor itself. My father froze. My mother's smile cracked, and Miles lunged for the laptop. Gregory Hale tried to leave, but was stopped by federal agents. Evelyn had sent the files before dawn. I stood as flashes lit my face and said only, "Transparency, right?" Then I walked away. Behind me, chaos roared. And for the first time, the truth didn't need me to speak for it. By morning, the city was buzzing with the fallout. Every headline screamed the same truth they had tried so hard to bury. Caldwell Foundation under federal investigation. CEO Gregory Hale arrested for fraud and political bribery. Anonymous whistleblower exposes multi-million-dollar scheme. Police cars circled Caldwell's table. Yellow tape sealing its once proud doors. Miles had been taken in for identity fraud after they traced the falsified tax records. Elaine refused every interview, her only statement trembling on every network. My family was betrayed. And my father, Richard Caldwell, was seen outside the now empty mansion, sitting on the front steps beneath a bright red "for seizure order" sign. The empire he'd built on lies had finally caved in. That afternoon, he came to see me. No suit, no entourage, just a man stripped of his armor. His voice cracked when he said he only wanted to protect the Caldwell name. I told him softly that the name wasn't stained by the world. It was stained by his own actions. He looked at me with tired eyes, insisting I couldn't understand what it meant to guard a legacy. I told him I understood perfectly. I was guarding it too, just in a different way. By defending the truth. When he left, there was something new in his eyes. Not pride, not defiance. Something closer to regret. That night, Naomi called. Evelyn had refused to reveal who leaked the data. The truth doesn't need a name, she told the press. I smiled at that, realizing justice didn't have to shout to be heard. A week later, I received an anonymous email from Gregory's lawyer. It said my grandfather's medical file had been altered before his death. Elaine had requested the changes. I didn't open the attachments. Some doors, once opened, only lead to more darkness. The story was over, the truth was out, and for the first time in my life, freedom felt silent and complete. A year later, life had shrunk to something small and beautifully quiet. I lived in Bend now, tucked between pine trees and snow that gathered gently on the edges of my wooden window frame. My world was measured in black coffee, the hum of a Miles Davis record, and the rhythm of work I finally believed in. I'd opened a small nonprofit consultancy, helping local charities stay transparent, teaching them how to protect their integrity before it was ever threatened. On the morning of my 39th birthday, I lit a single candle on the table. No guests, no noise, just the whisper of wind across the cabin walls. The flame flickered like it was breathing for me. Later that afternoon, a brown envelope arrived, stamped from Portland. Inside was a financial magazine. On the cover, "Whistleblower Saves City from Hidden Political Network." Beneath the headline, a single line in italics read, "Author declined to identify the source." Tucked inside the folds was a handwritten note. "I think you've earned your new beginning. E.P." I set the magazine down and stared out the window. The winter sun cut through the trees, scattering light over the snow and into my half-filled glass of red wine. The reflection shimmered, a small, fractured halo. I spoke softly into the stillness, almost to myself. They threw a party to erase me from their family, but that night was the moment I truly began to exist. There was no music, no applause, just the steady peace of being unseen and entirely free. For the first time, I blew out my candle and wished for nothing but silence. As I cleaned the table, another envelope slipped from the bottom of the box. I opened it carefully. Inside lay a certificate, the Eleanor Trust, founded and chaired by Sarah Caldwell. My breath caught. The name of my grandfather's mother, the woman who'd built the family's first business, now lived again through a foundation that belonged to no one's greed. I smiled. Legacy had finally come home, not to blood, but to conscience.